All right, y'all, welcome back. So I have found a resource that I have been looking for about a week now that I'm really happy about. Cooked on my way to prepare dinner. I kept seeing in my mind's eye and just hearing like plant hunters, the golden age plant hunters. So I'm like, all right, that's what I need to really focus on next. I know it seems like I'm all over the place because in a way I kind of am, but I promise you, promise you, we finna get back on track again after I come back from finishing out the semester. In my long journey, and it really doesn't feel like it's been that long because time is just flying by. But in my over a decade's worth of time in this field and studying and learning and unlearning and relearning, at some point it really does get old. Constantly watching and reading how many people have centered themselves. The descendants of Europeans have really centered themselves with reference to botany, with reference to the flora and fauna of many different places, namely the land, North America, where my ancestors, many of you all may be listening, because again, this channel is for my people. I'm speaking to my people. Have native ancestry, indigenous, if you want to use that term, ancestry, Aboriginal, if you want to use that term, ancestry. And it has always been from the beginning for me, because remember, a lot of my exposure to the truth and reality of the world and our belief systems happened for me in my teen years. And so early teen years at that. And so for me, it has always been exhausting, quite literally, taxing, to constantly have to buy into the bull. And at this point, I'm allergic. My reaction is just that very reactionary to, I get hives and all the things. I start itching when I read through some of this stuff, and we'll kind of see that here in the preface, and just how they frame bullcrap and how they sanitize and just completely erase history in efforts to pay homage to and honor so-called unsung heroes of conquest. And it's like, no, they're perpetuators of violence and robbery and thievery and lies. At some point you get tired. You really do. You get so sick and tired of feeling like, in order for me to have a voice or to be successful, which that's subjective, in this field I've devoted my life to, I have to uphold this very delicate, fragile system built on bullcrap. And I'm really over it. And a lot of my colleagues in this space, bless their hearts, I mean, again, how privileged you must be. They're very ignorant. And I'm not saying, again, I'm the sharpest tool in the shed, but I'm at least making an exerted effort to educate and inform myself of the true histories and origin of a lot of the knowledge practices, and for many people, the success that you've garnered of this work. I mean, these people have managed to tout themselves around as being owners of things that don't belong to them. The entitlement is insane and annoying and exhausting. I mean, really, like, almost superhuman efforts, great personal sacrifice. This is with regard to these plant hunters who were also people hunters and murderers and plunderers and rapers and all the things. But they come out on top being revered as near gods. near gods, to be thanked for the beauty, for the knowledge of this is, from Great Britain, Europe, and other places, and truly the world over. And it's quite literally sickening. I couldn't even read through the preface of this work because it was like a freaking love letter to these men who through violent means have acquired what they have. And I understand that much of that was prophecy. Much of that was prophesied. God himself cursed Esau, Edom, and those who would come from him because of him selling his birthright with having to use violence in order to acquire anything in the earth. But that doesn't negate the consequence of that, of choosing to do that. And that doesn't mean that I have to be okay with that coming from a lineage and group of people that for millennia and even longer have been victim to your bullcrap. No. There's no honor among thieves and murderers, as much as y'all try to make it that way. As much as you try to romanticize and sanitize your history, it is what it is. And I'm tired of not being able to express the frustration and anger that result from even just studying history. And if you aren't enraged by studying history, you ain't studying history. Child, it's a lot. But anyway, I'm interested, very excited to delve into this resource. A lot of history pulled into this. My university has it, not in any sort of digital form. And I believe someone has it checked out. So I was like, okay, bet. Let me see what I can find. And what do you know? None other than the golden age, the Internet Archives, buddy. We have found this work, and I've taken tons of screenshots. I'm gonna make sure I continue to borrow this till I'm done reading through it. But let me see, where was I at? I really appreciate this work because it's one of the few that I have found thus far that actually reference and speak to Bartram and a few others too that were like contemporaries with him throughout that particular era, and some that have come before. But let me see if I can find this coming up here real soon, y'all. And they do actually speak to a lot of the flora and plants in North America, which I'm really excited about. And is this it? Look at that. They're native heathen Indian. I mean, just woo, boy, I tell you. These folk. Oh, here we go. Yeah, Bartram and his son William. Oh, this God-fearing Quaker. Oh, yes. Pah! My goodness. And his work informed his contemporary of that time, Linnaeus's work, which I think was mentioned. Yeah, right here. Yeah, and Linnaeus is greatly revered in the botanical herbal space. A lot of his, anywhere you see Latin naming systems, nomenclature for defining the quote unquote natural world, it's coming from this guy usually. There is another naming system not as commonly used. I can't remember off the top of my head right now what that is, because this tends to the one from this particular individual tends to overshadow a lot of that. But I mean, Bartram alone, just one of them, because it was two, is responsible for nearly 320 species, that would go into this sort of lexicon of plants used for the very foundations of ethnobotanical systems the world over. And it's so funny because a lot of my colleagues' attitudes is kind of like, well, I mean, aside from like sassafras and like a few other things that y'all use in hoodoo, like I don't really employ many of the plants used by foundational Black Americans or Black Americans in the work that I do. So it's like many of these seeds anyway were brought over and naturalized and introduced into this country. And so like, yeah, I mean, it's not like you guys really have anything to do with the majority of plants used in herbalism. So like, get over yourself. And it's just like, like that's what it sounds like in my head, y'all. Forgive me. It just is so ridiculous because it's like literally everything every single thing about Western quote unquote herbalism comes from my ancestors, many of them. So stop, please. And my goodness, pick up a book and read, educate yourself. Something outside of the echo chamber in which you reside that just continues to perpetuate your biases. Like, find a way to be a little bit comfortable living in the space of cognitive dissonance long enough that you allow yourself and your beliefs to be challenged. Because for you to be a practitioner in this space and to have never heard of, I'll extend some grace because there was a time when I had never heard of. So I get it. But at some point, like I had to learn and I had to hear of these individuals and in the history. And it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of work. It does. But it really should be a requirement. Because for far too long and for far too often, so much has been erased. So much has been hidden. So much and so many destroyed. And it's ridiculous. I look at, that film that I shared with you all with the Seminoles, and I know in that film that, it's like it was probably filmed in the late 1800s or early 1900s, published, I think, in 1919 by the Ford Company. A lot of people feel like, well, this was like so recent. So, I mean, we still know that it was, in the 1900s, but a lot of people look at that as like, well, this isn't really like a lot of the times that these explorers were out and it doesn't really influence the native knowledge. Like, no, these people and their ancestors have been here for centuries prior to the filming of these people. And I know I said in one of those, the one where I was kind of sharing my commentary while we watched together, that like, man, imagine you on the land minding your business and some voyeur, some plant hunter or whatever is just, watching you with devious plans for you. And I even meant for their resources and for their land too, that they were original stewards of, and their ancestors original stewards of. A lot of what we see with the Seminoles and other dark-skinned natives is their early phases of the ethnogenesis that foundational Black Americans came out of. It's natives mixed with a lot of those Africans brought over. Also, there were still dark-skinned natives and indigenous here all along, too. But that's where you start to see a lot of those changes. And in the record that I mentioned, The Ancient History of America, which we're going to delve into here soon, because I at least want to go through some of the pages that I highlighted, he speaks about that. the tawny hued. Some records even mention olive. Some say red. And even those earlier red natives, I know that there was kind of a distinction between some who were actually tawny, who painted their skin red as a part of their customs, and those who were complected a little differently. But all ultimately, maybe not all, but many of them ultimately becoming a part again of this ethnogenesis, this emergence of a new people and culture, transformed through the experience on this land, with ties again that go back far before and beyond any of these European powers ever coming over here. And so again, everything comes from those native to the land, and not just here, everywhere else in the world that you sent out hunters and men and so-called botanical travelers and explorers to exploit and take this knowledge. Only for you to retell the history as some sort of story, and I'm going to use that word in the sense of, because it's manifold meaning to that, of a lie with regard to its origin. Sometimes I just feel like we are all walking around smiling and waving at one another like the Truman Show or something, and just completely like acting as though we don't really know what's going on or see what's going on. And then unfortunately you do encounter some people who don't, and that's pretty terrifying. And it's not like anyone is going to really understand everything that is happening, but the point is, at some point you got to like wake up. I know that it's so horrible sometimes that it feels surreal, at least for me. Like when I look at the history of the violence pressed upon my people just in the last 200 years, 300 years, which in the grand scheme of time is not a lot of time, that in and of itself feels surreal. It's so horrible that you have to disassociate. But at the end of the day, these things actually quite literally happened. And in some cases, it's still happening. It's convenient. Yeah, it feels good to be ignorant and to bury our heads in the sand. And we think that ignorance is blissful. And for the simple-minded, maybe. But for those who love being delusional, maybe. But again, you cannot be a student of history. I don't care who you are. I just don't believe that. If you're human and truly be unscathed or untouched by what you see, read, and learn and hear and uncover. There's a purpose, there's a reason why it's been buried and continues to seek to be buried. Because it is so horrific. And as we've started to read, plants and human conflict go hand in hand. Regardless of which one we choose to center, we literally don't have the natural world and our existence in that without those stories intertwining. Since the garden, when extraterrestrial spiritual beings would utilize plants in order to deceive and cause the fall of mankind. Whether you choose to believe that story or not is on you. Fine. This is what I believe. I believe in our big biblical origins. And much of these records, whether you consider yourself an atheist, believer, or non-believer, acknowledge that. You can't escape it. And maybe that's why a lot of people don't venture into actually educating themselves on the history of stuff, because it actually quite literally challenges and opposes the alternate reality that they've chosen to buy into denying the existence of a power greater than themselves in the first place. You know? Because maybe in a way too, it makes you, again, it pulls at your heartstrings if you're human, and allows you to be uncomfortable to the point of having to acknowledge that, dang, the things my foreparents did were horrible, evil. No, we are in an awakening, in a renaissance right now that has many facets, is truly profound. And a part of that is reclaiming our relationship and history with the earth, with the land. This beautiful resource that the Father isn't creating more of. This is all we get. This is all we got. And if every inch of it ain't damn near stained and soaked with the blood of his children, our Creator, you must not be living on this earth. Because that is upon what all that you see and have seen for millennia is built. Our water fuels the data centers, right? No, the blood of Black and brown people fuel everything. I think it criminal to be able to form any sort of group or gathering or authority in the space of botany, institutions and programs in the space of botany, the ecological, some biological sciences, in the space of herbalism, and not have a working knowledge and understanding of this stuff. I think it criminal and so disrespectful. And adding a paragraph or a few sentences in your book, to all my herbal authors out there, acknowledging indigenous this or that, being very generalized and vague, isn't enough. It's insufficient. Because at the end of the day, you're still centering yourself and you're still giving homage to and centering these people. And it's ridiculous. To me, this is me. My opinion's how I feel, and I'm entitled to and have a right to that. Again, you're welcome to go on about your business should you not like what you are hearing here. Ooh, y'all. It frustrates me. It really does. It really, 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 really does. And it just, every single time that I speak the species and the genus of a plant in the Latin, a part of me dies. It really does. As someone who understands myself to be and has had experience in being, but all glory, honor, and praise to the Father, the Most High God, a healer, every fiber of my being is integral, of my soul, of my spirit, to the work that I do, and to my connection with the Father's medicines from the earth. And there's life and death in my tongue. And so, yeah, to have to speak to something created in such a divine and beautiful way and deduce it to something that reeks with the stench of violence and destruction and evil. It does. It really vexes my spirit. You know? But it's so integral and so necessary to identifying the proper plant at times. And if it ain't Linnaeus, then it's TCM, then it's Ayurveda, then it's some other tongue from some other nation that is also violently reaped the reward of knowledge that was given to Shem, taken, changed, perverted, you know? And that's why, like, when that scripture says that the more you know, like, the more sorrow you have. I mean, I've understood that for many years of my life, but it's so true. It is so very true. But anyway, if this is a resource that you all are interested in delving into with me, I'm going to try to read through this and pull out the pieces that I think are beneficial to know and that help to, oh my God. Look, I'm trying to tell you. I think they also mentioned the Dukes in this as well. But remember the South Seas Company, Great Britain Company, slave trading company? Yeah. Woo, he going in this. Yeah. Telling you. All these Royal Society, listen. Yeah. And it's not just with, again, Europeans or the Spanish or the Portuguese. Africans too. Asians, Indian. Like, listen. The world over. When I said it, I meant it. All nations have benefited and have our blood, the blood of many of our ancestors, on their hands. Ooh, y'all, it gets so deep. Child. All right, y'all, I'm gonna end this right here. You know, be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe if you feel moved to. And y'all be blessed.